Hello, everyone, and welcome to Community Chats. And today we are going to be talking about artificial intelligence. My name is Sandra Arevalo, and I'm the Director of Community Health and Wellness. With us today is Susan Mazzarella. She is the Senior Director for Behavioral Health Services here. Please correct me if I'm saying something wrong, but I think that's the title.
The Employee Assistance Program.
For the
Yeah.
employee assistance.
For the employees. Yep.
Okay, so there you go. So you have plenty, that I know for sure. So thank you, Susan, for being here. Today, we want to talk about artificial intelligence. It's becoming more and more popular. More people are using it, but we want to know about the effects that artificial intelligence can have, on families, especially kids, and how maybe you can share with us some tips that as parents we can implement at home to make sure that artificial intelligence is used correctly. So today we're going to have a Q&A, and that's the reason why I want to invite all of our attendees to please interact with us and send us questions. The more you interact, the more fun we have here. So please help us have fun. Okay, so let's start, Susan. Positive effects. People like to talk about artificial intelligence and say how bad it is. But let's start with the positives. Are there any positive effects of the use of artificial intelligence?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. I think when it's used safely and responsibly, and, we're able to really educate children as well as ourselves to be able to be using it, but to use it in a way that they're also selective about it and what they're using it for, and to be able to think critically when they're reading and when they're using any kind of AI. Listen, if we're using it to, help write something, that's a little bit different. But if we're using it, if you will, as kind of a form of medical advice, or we're using it as a form of like social advice, that's when I think it can be dangerous. For generally, if people are asking about what might be helpful to boost my self-esteem, those are very common things we can ask, AI, right? And it's going to be very helpful. Certain simple coping strategies, certain stress management strategies could be very, very helpful. But if we're really looking for it to resolve difficulties in our relationships, or how we're addressing mental health issues, even if we're not identifying them as mental health issues, whether it be sadness, anxiety, whatever it might be, that we really do that with professionals, not with necessarily using an AI model, or chat GPT. Yeah.
And Susan, how do we know that the information we are receiving when we use AI is true? Like, for example, you just mentioned coping strategies. As a dietitian, I think about nutrition. And there are so many diets out there, so many things. And they can say, oh, you want to lose 2 pounds, then, force yourself to eat raw eggs and vinegar, apple cider vinegar every morning. It's like, so how do we know, what we should follow or when we should follow advice and when we shouldn't?
Oh, that's a good question. That's why I think that people really do need to fact check, and
Mm-hmm.
they really should not just go on one AI model's interpretation of their question or the validity of their response, how accurate it is. We're now realizing more and more people are really looking. Even today, I just read that people are looking to review test results
Yes.
with AI, chatbots. And this isn't just kind of seeking some general medical advice. I've had a problem or a headache for a number of days, which certainly I don't think I'd use a chatbot for that, because that could be a very serious issue, right? Someone has a severe headache for a number of days could be some very, very, very serious concerns. But people to use it responsibly, in so much as not to go by what they're being told or what it's sharing with them as completely true and accurate. So I think, again, being able to, if I'm hearing this, maybe I really do need to be able to look to some other research. And there's certainly a lot of accredited organizations and even governmental organizations and other types of health, medical, as well as behavioral, that can help answer questions that have a whole bunch of backing behind them. You know where it's coming from. You've got an institution, an organization that's very well renowned. I go by those models really first and foremost, and then being able to recognize sometimes that chatbots or AI models are giving you what they want you to hear. There's this kind of reinforcement bias, or what they call like a confirmation bias. And sometimes those can unfortunately reinforce negative actions or negative thinking for the recipient. For example, we know that there's been chatbots that have talked to people about how to harm themselves, right? Or for eating disorders, as you talked about nutrition, how to be able to, and these are pretty well known, right? And they're being, reviewed and explored. But there really is just certainly a somewhat narrow perspective that you're going to get from an AI model rather than a broader model with various different parties giving feedback that really are more renowned in the community.
Yeah. I also think that some of the dangers of AI is that whatever you're Googling for, AI has its own memory and it's going to keep appearing. So you just mentioned like harming themselves. If I'm thinking about harming myself and I start Googling, like, how can I, harm myself in a safe way or a painless way or something like that. And then I go to AI, the same things are going to start populating.
That's exactly right. That's what I'm referring to. That's like that confirmation bias. And that's when, unfortunately, again, these extreme instances, because it's just like if we're looking on Amazon as cookies come up and we're looking for shoes, you're just going to see shoe ads, right? Over and over again. The same thing is going to happen.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for how do I hide or conceal effects, again, let's just use eating disorder. They're going to provide you AI models are going to provide you with resources as well as information, probably more than you even would want. To engage in these kinds of negative or what can be risky or negative behaviors. Yeah. And we do know that. The other thing is that, it can really limit people in their own ability to problem solve, in their own ability to work through with their own coping strategies, difficulties, for example, again, that they may have with food, where they're how they're seeing themselves, how they're regulating their food, how they're, using food, really. So it's kind of got a bias built in, but also if it's there giving me these answers that I believe to be, fully accurate, again, and that's a real question of whether or not they are, it can limit our own resilience and problem solving and ability to even connect with other people to discuss, whether it be peers or whether it be a professional or my parent, about, what the difficulties might be. Because teens just don't have the level of critical thinking and brain development that to really distinguish often from certain things that might really, really be. They don't have kind of as much discretion. They haven't really developed that yet. They haven't really developed their higher levels of critical thinking yet. They're just starting, right? Even in high school. So it's important that parents really kind of monitor some of their use of AI. We've talked about that with social media.
Yeah.
Right? Forever is you don't need to know everything about every social media they're on or every site, but you should have certain checks and balances in place with your kids' use of social media accounts. And the same thing certainly is true of AI, which is even broader. than
Now,
social.
talking again about, brain development and, going back in history, I remember when I was little, I was learning mathematics. It was like you had to do everything by hand, right? 2 + 2, 2 + 3, whatever. And they told you like, okay, this is going to help you develop your brain. And then calculators came over and everybody wanted to use the calculator. And I remember in school, they used to tell us, you don't use a calculator because you have to use your brain. But now I see, now you don't even write. Now it's like, hey, Siri,
On a
what is
laptop.
2 +
Yes.
2? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like you don't even type the numbers anymore. So how does that affect it? Because you were saying the development of the brain.
I mean, I think, the brain has so much elasticity in it, and it does really, the better you use it, the more you use it, the more it's going to work for you. The more you really, really use those levels of thinking, and including, math is like a perfect example, right? It's cumulative. You have to build on your math expertise. So if we're not using that really, I guess the word is it's like a muscle, exercising it, it's not going to develop as fully. And it might, get a little bit lazy.
Yeah.
If I could just go to something and pick it up, and it give me the answer, and I believe that answer to be without my own reliance on myself to, again, think it through in a thoughtful, sound, and time, effective way. I mean, things take time, especially the bigger the questions, right? The bigger the concepts. If we just look for this quick fix answer, I think that can get us in trouble with AI. And it does. Because there's really no quick fix, right? Just learning.
No, and it's exactly what you say. In some way, AI can help us save time. Like I had the other day this happening to me that I asked one of my students, like, okay, I need you to put a presentation, do a presentation on PowerPoint about diabetes. I swear, 10 minutes later, said, done. I'm like, what? And they went to AI and they said, presentation on the basics of diabetes, and boom, there you go. It was done. And I'm thinking, okay, we used to learn, reading the literature, summarizing, and then putting the PowerPoint together and all of that. Where are all these steps going? It's like now we just ask the machine.
It certainly can save us time, right? And a certain amount of effort. I think that when we're doing that, we need to really be able to tailor it very much so to what do we really want to get across? And what, even if we're having these slides that, if you will, created, right, by an AI model, that how do we really be able to tailor them and make them very specific to what we really want to get across? It's not going to answer all your guest questions, right? And hopefully, if you're really presenting a PowerPoint, people are going to be at the other side of it, right? We do sometimes recordings that involve PowerPoints, but if they're live, right, and they're done remotely, or they're done in an in-person way, we want really people to elicit the question. We can give them the facts, right? AI can do that, but interpreting it and talking about what could go wrong with my diabetes meds, and when will there be little nuances in my changes in my levels that I should be keeping an eye on. That very detailed that has to come from people.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That has to come from a presenter, a person, an expert.
Yeah, thank God for that. And then going back to our conversation that people are Googling what they have, what we say, Dr. Google said, it's like two things can happen. Obviously, you are most likely misdiagnosing.
Yes.
And if you have something serious, like you said, if I have a very severe headache for 3 days, doesn't go away, and you think like, oh no, I'm just gonna have Tylenol and that's it. And then maybe you're having a stroke, is very dangerous. But then, there are some people that I've seen that they always look for the worst case scenario. It's like, oh, I have a new mole here. I have a skin cancer and already it's in my kidneys and it's killing me. I have 2 months to live,
Yeah.
and then the anxiety that provokes,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable.
Often undue anxiety. And that's what I would really, be wary, encourage people to be weary of doing that, because often it can be wrong, inaccurate. Sometimes the information we're putting in isn't accurate enough, right, to get it as solid. And there's so many other factors. I mean, when you're considering, again, someone in the example of having a headache for days, I mean, that could be many things, not, if you will, my word, a brain tumor. I'm reading chat, right? It might make me think, oh my God, look at it. Well, it may be some hypertension. It may be some changes to my diet. It may be allergies or other type of infection in my system, whether it be a sinus infection. But certainly, I think we want to look when people are using AI in unhealthy ways. So it's like kind of, if you will, to either get answers that really should be assessed by a professional, or they're using it in a way to just kind of, go around learning the information and writing the paper on your own. I think when it's causing us, we can get so scroll and lose so much time and hours. We're not even socializing. We're caught up in some kind of, sometimes it's social media, but it can often always be just chat, AI information that we should know where we're getting all of our information. It's okay to do research, but you really need to be able to, kind of recognize where it's coming from, to be able to validate it, and be able to use it carefully and wisely. That's what I think. And I think as a parent, you need to know how your kids are using it. And if they are overusing it, and if they're replacing, it for other real life interactions, or interactions that they might really need some professional support with, and trying to get their answers from, an AI model as to why they're not leaving their room or socializing with friends, or why their grades have slipped. That's when I think parents need to, look it over and intervene with kids and kind of understand what unhealthy attachments they might have to
Now,
these models.
why do you think kids, especially, and even grown-ups, I mean, I see older people that look like teenagers glued to their phones. Why is that so attractive to people? Like that you can spend hours and hours, like people cannot spend half an hour doing exercise, but they can spend 3 hours.
People spend hours on their device.
I know. Yeah. Why is that so attractive?
I mean, I think for some people it's, if you will, distraction. I think for some people who might not have other kinds of activity or socialization in the real world with other people, they can express themselves in a safe way. They don't have to worry about someone judging them or saying the wrong thing, or being, out of time with things. Again, even like social media as well, it can give you a sense of engagement and belonging. Even if you're just reading information or talking to someone that's basically, right, with an AI, talking back to you.
Yeah.
They're having a conversation with you. And, it's almost like a kind of reassurance, getting feedback, and feeling kind of a sense of belonging or approval, I think, that some people seek out. I think other people are just generally curious. And I would say that's okay. You can, have information AI presented to you, but also read other types of news and information, right?
Yeah.
Don't just go by what you're looking up on your AI.
I happened to be talking to a literature professor And he was telling me how, more and more people do exactly that. They start using AI for homework. And
Mhm.
it even happened to me that, I left some homework for my students, and it was amazing how all of them came up with the same exact sentence.
Exactly. That's one
Okay.
way that the professors are now and teachers are checking it,
Yes.
because they're coming up with the same responses and so they know it all went to the same site, whatever model they went to, probably, chat or one of the more, renowned ones or recognized ones that's simple and yet free. And the teachers know that's the one of the ways that they're spotting it.
Mhm. And I like what you said earlier, Susan, that, not just teachers and professors, but also as parents, I think that we need to incentivize analysis more than anything else in our kids. Just giving a straight answer like, what are the colors of the flag? Well, everybody knows that. Now, why are those colors in the flag? Now that's a different thing. And then if you say, would you use different colors if you were going to do the flag? That's an even deeper question, because then you need to know the colors of the flag, why they were there, and make you think, okay, what is my opinion on this and what would I change, which AI cannot give you. So I think that as parents, we need to start, incentivizing that a little bit more, that
Absolutely.
analysis capacity in our children.
Absolutely. It's really almost forcing or encouraging, not forcing, eliciting and encouraging your child to have a higher level of thinking in a broader way that's outside of just what's being presented to them. And that's really where creativity, right?
Yes.
And invention come from, right? We can look at past, what we know. Someone didn't, just to develop the polio vaccine. There was other information and research they had at their fingertips, but they brought it to a different level through their thinking and through their higher way of reasoning with it. And that's really what builds, learning and curiosity and creativity. And
Yes.
that's really when most of us are going to be the most successful, right? We're not really, or we shouldn't, God forbid, I'd like to think we're not just going to go get a PhD or a medical degree without really learning the information, because we had a chat. We have to be able to on our feet, right? Even if they might be using some models in care, I'm sure they are, medical as well as all different levels of care. It still has to be with human interpretation
Mhm.
and human review.
Yeah.
It can't just be put in and an algorithm is going to give you an answer.
Yes.
The facts and the algorithm is going to give you all the answers.
Yeah.
So I think really it's so important that, knowing what your kids are on, talking with them openly, not judging their use of it, but rather eliciting communication and conversation. And then being very keen after you're speaking openly about what expectations you might have around the use that you don't want to use for homework, maybe, or to write a paper, right? Okay. Have certain parameters that maybe if they're gaining information, that might be okay. And also how to be able to use it with always with thinking critically,
Mhm. Yeah.
thinking to validate and to, reason, and be thoughtful.
Yeah. And someone here says that, they also have tools that can check if AI was used to write a paper.
That's right. Absolutely. And, I mean, that's always a way to deter kids as well, right? But, if you cheat, I don't want to say cheat, but if AI gives you all the answers and eventually you even get through the school year passing your algebra, you might have a really, really hard time the following year when you go to calculus.
Mhm.
And it might be more difficult because if you don't know algebra, you're not going to know calculus.
Right.
Right. So, I think being able to say, if you get caught, or I could get caught by my teacher can deter. but I don't think it gives you the larger teens or young people, the larger understanding about what are the benefits, but are also what are the thoughts and risks that you should be having in your head about how you're using it.
Yeah.
And the amount you're using it and what you're using it for.
Now, the American Academy of Pediatrics, they recommend 0 time of AI between 0 to 2 years, 1 hour if you're 2 to 5 years old. And that's mostly for like music or reading stories, or things like that. And then after 6, it should be only used for homework, in the sense of editing something, or as you said, helping to write something, like you write it and then you give it to AI to edit. But I think that one good use also of AI is to help you understand some concepts, not literally to copy and paste, into your paper. But when you don't understand something, it's like, okay, ask AI to give you, like an explanation of things. Like, you can actually copy and paste into AI and say, can you explain this paragraph in different words?
Absolutely. I think that's the most valuable. I really, in using it in that way, I'm unclear about this, or I'm not sure how to go about writing that. I need to have some ideas, or helping me, asking it to help you better understand the concepts and the critical pieces in maybe a narrative or a piece of prose, not to write it for you. Because there's a big difference, right? Not even to give me all the points, but to at least clarify with me what are the key pieces of this that I should be paying attention to. And in the questions that I've been asked, whether it be in an assignment or in a test, how to elaborate based on what AI share. And I wouldn't just go by what AI says. You know what I mean? If, if it's, I would go to other models of literature. If it's something, it's not just AI is going to spew out to me about Shakespeare. I look to other literary organizations to give me information if I'm not understanding, which was mine for me.
Yeah.
Shakespeare, I could read it and not understand most of any of it.
Yeah.
So, and what did we do then? We went to other things that you could look to help give you an idea and more of a foundation of what was going on in the story.
Yeah, like for example, I'm more of a visual learner. So sometimes when I don't understand something, I just go to YouTube and I ask for a video. Like, can you explain, this in the way of a video? And you find everything in there. And then when I see it, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is how it's going. I think that that's a good use. And as parents, we need to tell that to our kids. It's like AI is not there to do homework for you. It's a tool that you can use to help you, do a better homework or finish your homework or understand your homework.
And I think YouTube is the same way, right? In a way, YouTube can help you to be able to, fix something in your house, maybe. Right. Yes. And it's not, I don't know if I'd ask it for electrical wiring and stuff, but, help me fix something in my home that's relatively simple. Yeah. I can see it doing that, but you don't want to go by all YouTubes either. Right. And follow what they say. The YouTubes, some of them can be very dangerous. Some of them are very not accurate. They're not, anyone could post to YouTube, right? Create it and post it. So I think that we want to, be careful. Again, although that is live, it's not like based, on, and algorithms and, a chat bot. It's, I wouldn't take that for granted either. I wouldn't have videos help me rewire my house,
right.
My electrical panel in my house.
Yeah. And also we need to teach our kids about being honest, like if you're using AI to do your homework, well, then you have to reference AI in your homework, because these are not your ideas.
That's
I
right.
think that we need to incentivize that sense of ownership and responsibility and honesty in our kids as well.
And I mean, I think that's with so many things with kids, right? Whether it be cutting school or experimenting with substances, is that, being honest and being responsible, right? And accountable and being held to consequences, right? If I'm not following that, I need to be held accountable and there may be consequences. I may have failed that test because I didn't cite having used an AI model.
Yes.
Because I didn't, do a lot of the research on my own. I just, copied kind of what was spewed out at me. And that really is about, you're right, kids learning a sense of kind of integrity, right? About how they're choosing their success, right? And do I want to cheat to do that or cut corners, or do I want to be accountable and responsible for having learned it myself, and taking all the credit that goes with that.
Yeah. And the sad story is that it's so easy to copy and paste now. Like
Absolutely.
before, we had to, even if we use the book, we have to rewrite everything by hand, which means you're reading and writing and somehow memorizing. But now you don't even need to read. It's copy paste done.
It sometimes is human nature. Let me do this the simplest way I can. That's not always the best way, though, right? We know that. Generally, in human nature, we want to try to, let me just do this quickly. Like, I have so much else to do. Or I got to get to a game. I want to watch, hang out with my friend Sally, whatever it might be. Cutting corners, is doing it the quicker way, maybe an easier way. Not necessarily a bad thing, but I think we have to take and pause when we're going to do that and for what situations we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Well,
lots to do here with AI, as you can tell by this conversation. Susan, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
About this very, very important and actual topic, actually. And I'm sure that lots of people are going to be watching the video as well, because times are changing. What can we say? For those of us who are a little older, we see the difference. And sometimes as good as this might be and as many benefits it might bring, we also need to be responsible and learn how to use it correctly, not just for us, but our future generations that are in our hands.
Because it's not going anywhere, and it is going to get more complicated. So I think that's why it's so important that we really spend the time now looking at how we ourselves, even as adults, right? Not even our children, but we need to model that, right? Kind of, behavior and responsible review and use of AI. And then let it, be known kind of to the kids what your expectations are of them as well as regarding responsible use.
And so there is a question here. Actually, we didn't touch on that, but it's a good question. And I know we're running out of time, but what about an elderly parent who's isolated? And it's true. Now, that's what I said in the beginning, that I see more and more elderly using the phone even more than a teenager. So is that a problem?
I think, what are they using the phone for? I think it's, it is that older adults and especially if they're more isolated or alone a lot of the time, to use certain social device, avenues as far as social media. I think that when it really replaces, though, it's not going to fulfill all those things, even if it's a great AI model, right? It's not going to fulfill all those things as that human interactions would.
Yeah.
And if people really do need those human interactions, they need to not just look to social media or AI portals, right? Or a means to do that, but getting out in their communities, engaging with other people from whether it be their churches, their communities, their, educational institutions, where they work more, other types of actually local organizations that they can become engaged or involved in. I think that's very important.
Okay. And how do you speak with them about it? Like, how can you say, okay, because with a child, and especially if it's our child, it's like, okay, too much phone, too much AI, too much computer, leave that alone, and I'm going to put you on soccer classes or whatever.
Mhm.
But how do you have that conversation with an elderly?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, kind of the same way to the extent that you're going to acknowledge it, you're not going to be able to reinforce, right, parameters, right, and limits around it as much because they're, a grown adult. But being able to encourage people to take time off, right, from social media to be able to discuss with them openly in a safe way how your concerns you might have as far as how they're using it and whether it's replacing other things that you might really want them to have and see them getting in more real life kinds of ways. Is it being used to maybe mask something else or to not recognize other issues that could be going on? Maybe not just loneliness, maybe depression, um, isolation, some other larger issues.
Or
That
even if it's a couple, I'm thinking maybe sometimes we use the phone or we use the computer to ignore the other person, like we don't want to be there.
or to avoid things, right? It's a good
Avoid.
distraction, and it's okay, if it's used sometimes, and I'm in a waiting office, and I'm, waiting to go in, and I don't have any work with me to do, and there's no conversation, or that I need to. It's okay. I'm using it as a distraction, but if you're using it really right to cope with things that you're wanting to not deal with or avoid or rather than manage or, address, then it can be problematic.
Yeah.
I mean, consistently, if I'm consistently doing that.
Yeah. And then that's when we need to come and have an honest conversation and say,
Absolutely.
I'm worried about you. I see you
Absolutely.
spending too much time here, and you're not exercising enough, you're not going out, and have you seen the flowers that are growing around the corner? Why don't we go and
Absolutely. And in trying to engage them and say, I'm concerned because I haven't seen you. Or I've been here for the last 40 minutes and you've been on your phone at least the last 20 minutes. I
Mhm.
mean, it's, you kind of see people sometimes and you said, I wonder why they're all getting together because none of them have picked their head up. They're all on their phone.
I know it's
So
like,
I wonder why they're spending time together when they're not enjoying the value. I mean, and I think it's when it comes from a place of I'm concerned, I'm missing my time with you.
right.
We used to when I visit, we'd go outside and
Mhm.
sit in the yard. And now we're not doing any of that, or it happens less and less frequently because you seem to always be more engaged with your phone. But I'm missing you. I'm feeling, at
Mhm.
a loss.
Yeah.
So, rather than where someone might become more defensive is, kind of what's wrong with you? Why are you always on that? It's you have a problem. People are going to
Are
become
you
defensive.
ignoring me? It's
Yeah.
probably true, but
Yeah. Yeah. I think though people take those kinds of things as more loaded
Mhm.
comments, and that's when they become defensive.
Yeah.
I'm feeling at a loss because our time together doesn't seem the same
Mhm.
as much anymore since I know you're always on that site.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sue, and to all of our attendees. I hope that this conversation has been helpful. And again, just join us next week in Community Chats. We're going to have another conversation worth listening to. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. It was good to see you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye bye,
bye.
everyone.